Have you ever noticed how your mood changes the moment you compare your life to someone else's? 1 second you're fine, and the next you feel behind, unlucky, and somehow less than. It doesn't matter how blessed you are or how much you've grown. The moment you look at someone else's life, your peace disappears. You start believing their success means your failure. Their happiness means your lack. And without realizing it, you become trapped in a silent battle inside your mind. Buddhism teaches that comparison is not an innocent habit, it's a slow poison. It kills your gratitude, steals your confidence, and blinds you from the beauty already happening in your own life. Today, I'm going to share 7 Buddhist lessons that will help you stop comparing, stop doubting, and start walking your own path with peace and clarity. Because the truth is simple. You will never be happy if you keep comparing your life to others. But the moment you stop, your entire world opens. Let's begin. 1. You suffer because you believe someone else's path is better than yours. When you compare your life to someone else's, the suffering you feel doesn't come from their success. It doesn't come from their blessings. It comes from a belief that their path is somehow more meaningful, more special, or more valuable than yours. This belief is the real source of your pain. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins when the mind becomes confused, when you mistake the surface for the truth and forget that every life has both visible and hidden layers. You look at someone smiling in a picture, celebrating an achievement, or enjoying a moment, and your mind instantly imagines that their entire life must be perfect. But you never see the full story behind that moment. You don't see the doubts they fight when no one is watching. You don't see the nights they cried over failures. You don't see the sacrifices, the heartbreaks, the mistakes, the loneliness, or the fears they carry quietly in their chest. Human beings show only the highlight reel of their lives, never the behind-the-scenes struggles. So when you compare your real, unfiltered life to someone else's best moments, of course you will feel unhappy. You are measuring your wounds against their victories, your challenges against their celebrations, your private pain against their public success. That comparison is not fair, not logical, and not grounded in truth. It is a delusion created by the mind, and Buddhism teaches that delusion always leads to suffering. The more you believe someone else's path is better, the more you disconnect from your own. You begin to ignore your blessings because you are focused on theirs. You stop noticing your growth because you are watching how fast they are moving. You no longer appreciate your timing because you are obsessed with their timeline. Slowly, without realizing it, your life starts feeling smaller, not because it is small, but because you've stopped seeing its beauty. You've stopped valuing your journey. But the truth is this: no two paths are meant to look the same. Every soul has its own lessons, its own timing, its own challenges, its own destiny. What someone else receives early, you may receive later, and what you receive early, others may never experience. Your path is not meant to be a copy of someone else's. It is designed for your evolution, your growth, your awakening. Peace begins the moment you stop treating life like a competition and start trusting that your journey is unfolding exactly the way it is meant to. When you stop believing someone else's path is better and start appreciating your own, your heart becomes lighter. You become calmer. You feel more connected to who you truly are. And that is when happiness finally begins to grow inside you, not because you reached someone else's level, but because you finally accepted the beauty of your own life. 2. The mind creates illusion through comparison. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is that the mind is not always showing you reality. It often creates illusions, stories that feel true but have no real foundation. And comparison is one of the strongest illusions the mind produces. When you compare yourself to someone else, you are not comparing truth to truth. You are comparing your honest, raw, unfiltered life to the version of someone that your mind has imagined. The mind takes a small piece of information like someone's new job, their relationship update, a picture of them traveling, or their confidence, and then builds an entire fantasy around it. You don't just see their success. Your mind exaggerates it. You don't just see their happiness. Your mind creates a story that their life must be perfect. You don't just see their progress. Your mind concludes that they are far ahead of you in every possible way. This illusion becomes so strong that you start believing it without question. But here's the truth you often forget. Every person has hidden pain, hidden fears, hidden weaknesses, and hidden battles that you will never see. No one posts their confusion. No one uploads their failures. No one broadcasts their private struggles, their self-doubt, or the nights they couldn't sleep because life felt too heavy. The illusion becomes even stronger on social media, where people share only the brightest parts of their lives. You begin comparing your reality filled with ups and downs to their perfectly filtered moments. Naturally, you begin to feel inferior, even though the comparison is completely unfair and based on incomplete information. Buddhism teaches that the mind loves to jump to conclusions. When it sees something attractive or inspiring, it immediately creates a story that is bigger than reality. This illusion pulls you away from your own life. It distracts you. It confuses you. It convinces you that others are happier, more successful, more stable, and more complete than you, when in reality, they might be struggling in ways you cannot imagine. The deeper suffering begins when you start believing these illusions as truth. You start feeling that something is wrong with you. You start thinking you are behind in life. You start questioning your worth and your abilities. But the sadness you feel is not because their life is better. It's because your mind created an illusion and you accepted it without questioning it. When you understand that comparison is built on illusion, the illusion begins to lose its power. You start seeing clearly. You begin to realize that you only ever saw a fraction of their life, not the full picture. And when you stop letting your mind create stories about others, you automatically become more grounded in your own reality. Buddhism teaches that clarity comes when you observe your mind instead of obeying it. When you notice the illusion forming, you remind yourself, I don't know their full story. I only know mine. And the moment you return to your own path, the illusion fades, comparison weakens, and peace returns. San, your happiness fades when you forget your own progress. One of the main reasons people become unhappy is because they slowly forget how far they have already come. They forget the mountains they have climbed, the storms they have survived, the versions of themselves they have outgrown, and the quiet battles they fought that nobody even knows about. When you compare yourself to others, your mind becomes so focused on their achievements that it blinds you to your own growth. You start believing you are stuck, or slow, or behind, even though you are actually moving forward in ways you no longer recognize. Buddhism teaches that the human mind has a habit of overlooking its own victories. It quickly gets used to the blessings you prayed for. What once felt impossible to you is now something you take for granted. Think about it. There was a time when you begged for the peace you have now, for the opportunities you have today, for the strength you carry quietly inside you. But because your attention is always pulled toward what others have, your mind stops celebrating the miracles happening in your own life. This is where the suffering begins. You forget the nights you stayed strong when everything around you was falling apart. You forget the emotional wounds that took you years to heal. You forget the mistakes you learned from and the growth that came from them. You forget that you used to be far more insecure, far more lost, far more confused than you are today. When comparison enters your mind, it erases your memory of progress and replaces it with doubt. You start thinking, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not moving fast enough. But this belief is not true. It is simply the result of focusing your attention on the wrong direction. Imagine walking up a tall mountain. If you keep looking up at how far you still have to climb, you will feel tired, discouraged, overwhelmed. But if you stop for a moment, turn around, and see the height you have already reached, suddenly everything feels different. You feel stronger, you feel more capable. You realize that you have already made incredible progress. Life is the same. When you only look at what others have achieved, you feel weak. But when you look at your own journey, you recognize your strength. The truth is that every human grows silently. You don't always notice your own transformation because it happens slowly, day by day, decision by decision, habit by habit. But just because it's slow doesn't mean it's insignificant. Some of the deepest growth happens in silence, when your mindset shifts, when you learn patience, when you stop reacting to things that once made you angry, when you develop self-control, when you choose peace over chaos. These changes don't show up on charts or social media, but they matter more than anything else. When you forget your progress, your happiness fades because you start believing you have nothing to be proud of. But when you remember the journey, you begin to feel grateful again. You start seeing yourself with compassion instead of judgment. You realize that you are not behind, you are evolving. You are becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded. Comparison tricks you into thinking that only big achievements count. But Buddhism teaches that small internal improvements are just as important, sometimes even more. Every moment you chose kindness instead of anger, discipline instead of laziness, self-respect instead of people-pleasing, growth instead of comfort, those were victories. Those were steps forward. Those were signs that your life is changing, even if you didn't announce it to the world. Your happiness returns when you shift your attention back to your own progress. When you start noticing the person you are becoming, instead of obsessing over the person someone else already is. When you celebrate the inner changes that others cannot see. When you acknowledge your resilience, your healing, your courage, and your silent sacrifices. The moment you honor your own journey, comparison loses its power. You begin to see that you are not behind, you are simply on a different timeline, and that timeline is perfect for you. Happiness grows naturally when you stop chasing someone else's pace and start appreciating your own evolution. 4. Comparison comes from ego, not the heart. One of the most important teachings in Buddhism is that the heart and the ego do not speak the same language. The heart speaks the language of peace, gratitude, compassion, and self-acceptance. The ego speaks the language of competition, insecurity, jealousy, and fear. And comparison is born not from the heart, but from the ego. When you compare your life to someone else's, it is not your true, peaceful inner self doing the comparing. It is the restless, unsatisfied ego trying to measure your worth through external things. The heart never tells you, look at that person, they are better than you, because the heart already knows your value is not determined by someone else's accomplishments. The heart is content. The heart is calm. The heart knows that you are walking your own path, learning your own lessons, and growing at your own pace. The ego, however, is never satisfied. The ego survives by convincing you that you are not enough, that you lack something, that you must constantly prove yourself. And one of the easiest ways the ego strengthens itself is through comparison. Buddhism teaches that the ego is like a shadow, always following you, always whispering doubts, always trying to pull you away from your inner truth. When you see someone doing well, your heart might feel inspired. But the ego flips inspiration into insecurity. Instead of, if they can do it, so can I, the ego says, you are falling behind. Instead of, I am happy for them, the ego says, why not me? Instead of, their success is proof that growth is possible, the ego says, you're not good enough. And the more attention you give to these thoughts, the louder they become. The ego compares everything: beauty, money, success, relationships, attention, achievements, status, possessions, even happiness. It constantly scans the world around you, looking for reasons to feel superior or inferior. But here is the truth. Either way, you lose. If the ego convinces you that you are better than others, you lose humility and peace. If the ego convinces you that you are worse than others, you lose confidence and gratitude. Both comparisons disconnect you from your heart, from your purpose, and from your inner happiness. The heart, on the other hand, is free from comparison because it knows that every soul has its own unique path. The heart understands that there is no competition in spiritual growth. The heart knows that someone else's success is not your loss, just as someone else's speed is not your delay. Where there is comparison, there is ego. Where there is ego, there is suffering. When you live from the ego, you treat life like a race. You feel pressure to keep up, to be ahead, to match the milestones of others. You begin to judge yourself harshly, forgetting that your journey is supposed to look different. But when you live from the heart, life becomes a peaceful walk rather than an exhausting competition. You trust your own timing. You appreciate the present moment. You celebrate progress instead of chasing perfection. You no longer feel threatened by others. You feel connected to them. That is why Buddhist teachings encourage humility and awareness. When you observe your thoughts instead of blindly believing them, you begin to notice when the ego is speaking. You start noticing the moments it gets triggered. When someone your age is more successful, when someone receives praise, when someone experiences joy, when someone achieves something you desire, the ego reacts instantly with comparison, but the heart responds with understanding. The moment you recognize that comparison is coming from the ego, you weaken its control. You take back your power. You detach from the illusion that your worth is measured by achievements or external validation. You realize that the ego is the one competing, not you. You do not need to match anyone. You do not need to prove anything. You simply need to stay connected to your heart, because your heart already holds everything you are searching for. When you silence the ego and listen to the heart, comparison begins to fade naturally. And when comparison fades, peace enters. You finally see that your journey is enough. You are enough. Your timing is enough. Your growth is enough. You stop chasing someone else's life and start living your own with clarity, gentleness, and purpose. The heart leads you back to yourself, where true happiness always begins. 5. You cannot walk forward while looking at someone else's path. Life becomes extremely difficult when your attention is constantly pulled toward what everyone else is doing. You cannot move confidently toward your own goals if you're always turning your head to see who is ahead, who is behind, and who is doing better. This habit of looking outward instead of inward weakens your progress, drains your energy, and leaves you feeling lost even when you are actually capable of moving forward. Buddhism teaches that wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. If your attention keeps leaving your path to focus on someone else's, your energy will do the same. And when your energy is scattered, your growth becomes slow, unstable, and painful. Imagine you are walking on a long, beautiful path meant only for you. It is filled with lessons you must learn, experiences designed for your healing, opportunities shaped for your growth, and moments created specifically to change you. But instead of paying attention to this sacred path, you keep stepping into other people's roads. You look at their milestones, their pace, their achievements, and their directions. Every time you do that, you stop walking your own journey. You pause. You hesitate. You question yourself. You lose momentum. And slowly, your path becomes blurry, not because it disappeared, but because you stopped looking at it. This is how comparison destroys progress. Not by taking away your talent, not by destroying your potential, not by blocking your blessings, but simply by distracting you long enough that you forget to take the next step. You waste precious time thinking about who is ahead of you when you could be focusing on becoming better at what you were created to do. You spend mental energy comparing your timeline to someone else's, instead of using that energy to improve your own habits, your own discipline, and your own direction. Buddhism teaches that clarity comes when the mind is focused on a single point. When you try to focus on multiple things, your life, their life, your progress, their progress, your clarity shatters. It becomes impossible to feel secure about your path when your eyes are constantly wandering towards someone else's. Think of it like driving a car. If you keep looking through the side windows instead of looking forward at the road, you will drift, lose balance, or eventually crash. Life works the same way. You cannot build your future while constantly watching someone else build theirs. Every person's journey is shaped by karma, choices, lessons, and experiences that belong only to them. Their timing is not your timing. Their challenges are not your challenges. Their destiny is not your destiny. Trying to compare two completely different journeys is like comparing the growth of a rose to the growth of a tree. They bloom at different times, they grow in different ways, and they serve different purposes. But both are beautiful in their own natural rhythm. When you keep looking at someone else's path, you start believing you must walk like them, succeed like them, achieve like them, or live like them. Without realizing it, you lose connection with your authentic self. You start making decisions out of pressure instead of purpose. You chase goals that don't belong to your soul. You choose directions that don't match your inner truth. And the more you move away from your true path, the more unhappy, unfulfilled, and emotionally exhausted you feel. Walking your own path requires presence. It requires awareness. It requires trust. You must trust that your steps may be slow, but they are taking you somewhere meaningful. You must trust that your setbacks are preparing you for growth that is not visible yet. You must trust that your healing, your progress, and your evolution will unfold exactly when they are meant to. Comparison blinds you to this truth, but focus brings it back. When you focus only on your path, your habits, your mindset, your actions, your growth, you start to feel grounded again. You begin improving yourself instead of chasing others. You begin seeing results that were invisible before. You start feeling more confident, more purposeful, and more aligned with who you want to become. Your steps become steady. Your direction becomes clear. Your mind becomes peaceful. You cannot walk forward while looking sideways. The moment you bring your attention back to your own journey, life begins to open. The road becomes clearer. Your energy rises. Your goals feel reachable. Your heart feels lighter. And you realize that happiness was never waiting at the end of someone else's path. It was waiting for you to return to your own. 6. Gratitude destroys. Comparison instantly. Comparison and gratitude cannot live in the same mind at the same time. The moment you compare your life to someone else's, gratitude disappears. And the moment you practice gratitude, comparison loses all its power. This is one of the core psychological and spiritual truths taught in Buddhism. Your mind cannot focus on what you lack and what you have at the same time. It has to choose. And whichever one you choose determines how you feel inside. If you choose comparison, you feel empty. If you choose gratitude, you feel full. Gratitude becomes the medicine that dissolves the poison of comparison. When you compare yourself to others, your mind immediately shifts into a state of scarcity. It tells you that you don't have enough, that you aren't enough, that your life is missing something important. It becomes a mental habit of looking at everything you believe you lack: success, love, beauty, money, opportunities, recognition, or progress. The more you look at these imagined gaps, the bigger they feel. You begin to think that your life is somehow incomplete or inferior. But this feeling is not created by reality, it is created by a lack of gratitude. Gratitude shifts your attention completely. Instead of focusing on what is missing, you begin noticing what is already present. Instead of seeing emptiness, you begin seeing abundance. Buddhist teachings often emphasize that true happiness comes not from changing your circumstances, but from changing the way you see them. Gratitude helps you see clearly again. It reveals the blessings that comparison hides. It brings back the light that comparison covers with shadow. Think about your life deeply for a moment. Think about how many things you have today that you once prayed for. Think about the difficult times you survived that you thought would break you. Think about the people who supported you, the lessons that shaped you, the opportunities that showed up unexpectedly, the strength that appeared when you needed it the most. These are not small things. These are the foundations of your inner richness, but comparison blinds you to all of them. When you practice gratitude, even in the smallest ways, your perspective shifts dramatically. You begin appreciating the calm moments you used to ignore. You start noticing the progress you dismissed. You realize that your life has depth, meaning, beauty, and growth, even if it doesn't look like someone else's. Gratitude teaches you that your blessings do not lose value just because someone else has different blessings. Buddhism often teaches that gratitude is a form of spiritual awakening. It wakes you up from the illusion of lack. It reminds you that life is happening for you, not against you. It teaches you that everything you have, your breath, your mind, your health, your experiences, your resilience, is a gift. When you truly understand this, comparison begins to feel pointless. Why look at what others have when the life you are living already contains everything you need to grow, evolve, and find peace? Gratitude also humbles the ego. The ego thrives on comparison. It wants more recognition, more validation, more status, more attention. But gratitude dissolves the ego's hunger. It brings the heart back to the present. It makes you feel whole instead of lacking. When you feel whole, you no longer crave someone else's life. You no longer feel threatened by someone else's success. You no longer measure yourself with someone else's milestones. Gratitude stabilizes your emotions. It grounds your mind. It strengthens your inner peace. Another powerful effect of gratitude is that it restores your connection to your own journey. When you start appreciating where you are, you stop obsessing over where someone else is. You begin to move with patience instead of pressure. You begin to trust your timing instead of doubting it. You begin to work with clarity instead of insecurity. Gratitude reconnects you to your own path. It gives you the emotional strength to keep going without constantly comparing your progress to others. And the beauty of gratitude is that it does not require big moments. Even small acknowledgements of the present moment, like appreciating the air in your lungs, the roof over your head, the lessons you have learned, or the peace you are slowly building, are enough to quiet the noise of comparison. Gratitude doesn't need perfection. It simply needs awareness. When you practice gratitude consistently, comparison gradually loses its place in your mind. The emptiness turns into fullness. The frustration turns into acceptance. The insecurity turns into confidence. The jealousy turns into inspiration. Gratitude transforms your emotional world from within. And through this transformation, you begin to understand something profound. You do not need someone else's life to be happy. You simply need to be present for your own. 7. The only person you must compete with is the you from yesterday. One of the most liberating teachings in Buddhism is that the path to peace begins the moment you understand that the only person you are truly in competition with is the person you were yesterday. Life becomes painfully heavy when you see it as a race against others, because as long as you are focused on someone else's speed, someone else's achievement, someone else's direction, or someone else's victory, you automatically lose connection with the truth of your own journey. The mind becomes restless, the heart becomes tired, and the soul becomes confused. You start living outwardly instead of inwardly. You start measuring your worth by external standards instead of inner growth. And slowly, without realizing it, You create suffering for yourself through a race that was never meant for you in the first place. Buddhism teaches that every person has a unique karmic path shaped by experiences, lessons, wounds, strengths, weaknesses, and destinies that belong only to them. No two people share the same combination of these things. That means comparing your life to someone else's timeline is not only unfair, it's spiritually incorrect. You cannot compare two journeys that were never designed to look alike. Someone else might succeed early because their karma prepared them for that chapter before you. Someone might face struggles later in life because that is when their lessons needed to surface. Someone might find love early while you find it later because your souls require different timings to grow. Someone might achieve something quickly, but their journey may not teach them as deeply as yours teaches you. Life is not equal in timing, but it is equal in value. Every journey is sacred in its own way. When you compete with others, you take your attention away from your own evolution. You start pushing yourself not because you feel inspired, but because you feel pressured. You begin chasing goals that do not belong to your heart. You begin running toward expectations you didn't choose. You feel anxious because you're moving at someone else's speed rather than your own. This leads to exhaustion, self-doubt, and unhappiness. But when you compete only with who you were yesterday, the entire meaning of life shifts. Suddenly, growth becomes personal, not competitive. Progress becomes motivating, not stressful. Effort becomes joyful, not heavy. And small improvements start to feel meaningful instead of invisible. Competing with yourself means asking questions like, am I a little kinder than I was before? Am I a little more patient? Am I a little more disciplined? Am I a little more aware of my thoughts? Am I making better choices? Am I healing instead of repeating the same patterns? These questions shift your focus from other people's paths to your own inner landscape. And this shift is powerful because every small step you take toward inner improvement builds a stronger, wiser, calmer version of you. You begin to feel proud of yourself for growth that no one else even sees. You start valuing yourself not for what you achieve outwardly, but for who you become inwardly. The truth is, the mind is always evolving. You are not the same person you were last year. You are not the same person you were 6 months ago. You may not even be the same person you were last week. Every challenge you face, every mistake you make, every emotion you feel, every moment of clarity you experience, they all change you in ways you don't realize. But when you compare yourself to others, you completely miss this evolution. You fail to see your own transformation. You forget that you used to struggle more with things that feel easier now. You forget that old situations that once broke you no longer have that power. You forget that you handle pressure better, understand people better, control your reactions better, and know yourself better. Competing with yesterday's version of yourself brings attention back to these quiet but powerful changes. It helps you recognize your resilience, your growth, and your strength. When you look back at your old self, the scared self, the confused self, the insecure self, you start feeling grateful for the progress you've made. You realize that even if you aren't where you want to be yet, you are no longer where you used to be. And that realization brings peace. Buddhism teaches that one of the greatest roots of suffering is constant comparison. It takes you out of the present moment and places you in an imaginary world where you measure your worth using someone else's life. But when you redirect your attention to self-growth, suffering dissolves. Your life no longer feels like a race. It becomes a journey, a personal, private, intimate journey of becoming a better human. You no longer look outward to find motivation. You find it within. You no longer allow others' success to intimidate you. You allow it to inspire you. You no longer chase approval from others. You build respect for yourself. Self-competition also teaches patience. When you compare yourself only to your past self, you realize that growth takes time. You understand that improvement is a slow, steady process. You learn that progress is not always visible immediately. You begin to trust that your efforts today will create quiet transformations for tomorrow. This patience removes the frustration that comes from comparing yourself to people who seem far ahead. Instead of feeling behind, you begin feeling grounded. Instead of feeling pressured, you begin feeling purposeful. Another beautiful effect of competing only with yourself is that it reduces envy. When you see life as a competition with others, envy grows naturally. But when the only competition is your own past self, envy fades. You no longer feel threatened by someone else's wins because their progress has nothing to do with your timeline. You understand that their success does not take anything away from you. You begin to celebrate others genuinely, without secretly feeling inferior. This pure, clean emotion brings lightness to your heart and clears negativity from your mind. Buddhism also teaches that transformation is not about becoming better than others. It is about becoming better than your old habits, your old reactions, your old fears, and your old excuses. Competing with yourself forces you to see where you need healing. It forces you to confront your weaknesses, not deny them. It forces you to grow in directions that matter, not directions that impress others. You begin making changes that help your soul evolve, not changes that give you temporary validation. When your only goal is to become a better version of yourself, your life becomes more peaceful and more meaningful. You wake up each day with purpose. You feel motivated to learn, to grow, to reflect, to improve. You stop worrying about being ahead or behind. You stop worrying about what people think. Your confidence becomes internal, not external. Your direction becomes clear, not scattered. Your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes sharper, your spirit becomes stronger, and in the process, you discover a profound truth. The real success in life is not about outrunning others, but about outgrowing your old self. When you embrace this truth fully, comparison no longer holds power over you. You stop giving your energy to distractions. You stop living through other people's stories. You stop measuring your value using someone else's timeline. Instead, you return to your own path with clarity and confidence. You begin building a life that aligns with your soul, not with society. And slowly, you transform into someone who no longer feels the need to compete with anyone because you know you are exactly where you are meant to be. That is the essence of true peace. Understanding that the only race worth running is the one where your only competitor is the you from yesterday. 8. Peace begins the moment you accept that your journey has its own divine timing. One of the most painful things about comparison is that it tricks you into believing your life is late. It fills your heart with a subtle panic that everyone else is moving ahead while you are standing still. You start feeling like your timing is wrong, your progress is slow, or your destiny is somehow delayed. But Buddhism teaches that nothing in life is early or late. Everything unfolds exactly when it is meant to. What appears as delay is actually preparation. What feels like waiting is actually alignment. What looks like stillness is often silent transformation happening beneath the surface. When you compare your timing to others, you create unnecessary suffering because you forget this truth. Your journey is sacred, and sacred things never unfold in haste. The mind believes that life should happen quickly. It wants results immediately. It wants growth without struggle, success without patience, and blessings without the waiting period that shapes the soul. But the universe does not operate according to the ego's demands. It operates according to deeper spiritual timing. Your life has a rhythm, a flow, a pace that is designed specifically for you based on your lessons, your karma, your inner readiness, and your path of awakening. When you compare your timeline with someone else's, you interrupt that rhythm. You create pressure where patience was needed. You create fear where trust was required. You create confusion where clarity was slowly forming. Think of the seasons. A flower does not bloom in winter. It does not force itself to blossom simply because other flowers in another region are blooming. It waits. It grows roots during the cold. It absorbs strength from the soil. It endures darkness so it can bloom with fullness when the warmth finally arrives. Your life is the same. You may be in a winter season while someone else is in their spring. You may be in a period of planting while someone else is in their season of harvesting. But comparing seasons is foolish because every season has its purpose. Your winter prepares you. Your spring awakens you. Your summer empowers you. Your autumn teaches you to let go. No season of your life is wasted. When you stop comparing your timing to others, you begin noticing the quiet miracles happening in your own life. You realize that your detours were protection, your delays were redirection, and your closed doors were guidance. What felt like stagnation was actually the universe removing what you were not ready for. What felt like rejection was actually your destiny pulling you toward something more aligned. What felt like slow progress was actually the foundation being built for something stable and long-lasting. Comparison blinds you to these hidden blessings, while acceptance helps you see them clearly. Another deep Buddhist teaching is that rushing does not bring peace. Presence does. When you live in comparison, you live in a constant rush, rushing to achieve, rushing to prove, rushing to become. But rushing steals the joy from the present moment. It distracts you from what is already beautiful in your life. It makes you overlook your small victories because you are too focused on reaching the next milestone. When you begin to accept your own timing, the rush fades away. You start breathing more deeply. You start noticing simple joys. You start feeling calmer inside. You become more connected to your journey because you are no longer forcing it, you are flowing with it. Accepting your timing also means releasing the idea that your worth is tied to how fast you achieve something. The world teaches speed, who graduates first, who earns more faster, who succeeds younger, who finds love earlier. But spiritual growth teaches depth, not speed. It teaches that the value of your journey lies in the quality of your transformation, not in how quickly it happens. Some people achieve things early in life, but lose themselves along the way because they lack the inner maturity to handle what they received. Others grow slowly but deeply, building wisdom, strength, character, and resilience that make their eventual achievements far more meaningful. Your journey is not slow. It is intentional. Your timing is not late. It is perfect. You are not behind. You are becoming. The universe is not ignoring you. It is preparing you. Every delay is shaping your patience. Every pause is strengthening your faith. Every setback is refining your character. Every challenge is expanding your capacity to receive. Comparison hides these truths by making you feel like you're running out of time, but acceptance brings these truths back into your awareness. When you accept your journey's timing, something powerful happens inside you. Anxiety melts into trust. Impatience transforms into inner peace. Fear becomes understanding. And instead of constantly checking how far others have gone, you start asking yourself deeper, wiser questions. What am I learning right now? What is this phase of life trying to teach me? How can I show up fully for my journey instead of rushing through it? Acceptance opens doors that comparison keeps closed. When you stop fighting your timing, life begins to flow with ease. Opportunities that once passed you by begin to appear. Connections that once felt distant begin to feel natural. Goals that once felt impossible begin to move closer. Not because your life changed suddenly, but because your internal state shifted from resistance to alignment. You begin to feel gratitude again, not for where you think you should be, but for where you are right now. You begin to feel hope, not because you're comparing yourself to others, but because you trust that your journey is unfolding perfectly. You begin to feel peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally understand that nothing in your life is happening too late. The truth is, you cannot compare timelines because souls do not evolve at the same speed. Your soul might need deeper lessons, more healing, more reflection, or more grounding before receiving the things you desire. This is not a punishment, it is preparation. And when you accept this, you stop asking, "Why am I not there yet?" and start saying, "I am exactly where I need to be." Peace begins the moment you stop measuring your life against someone else's and start trusting that your journey has a divine timing of its own. The moment you embrace this truth, comparison loses its power, insecurity loses its grip, and the constant pressure to keep up disappears completely. In its place comes a calm, steady, grounded confidence that whispers, "My path is mine, my timing is mine, my destiny is mine." And that is when life finally begins to open in ways it never could while you were busy looking to the side instead of looking within. 9. True happiness begins when you stop needing approval from others. One of the most silent forms of suffering in the modern world is the constant need for approval. People don't even realize how much of their life they are living for the eyes of others, not for their own heart, not for their own growth, and not for their own peace. Without awareness, you start measuring your decisions based on how they will be judged. You start dressing, speaking, behaving, and even dreaming according to what you think others will approve of. And slowly, without noticing it, you drift further and further away from your true self. Buddhism teaches that the root of this suffering comes from attachment, specifically, attachment to other people's opinions. And as long as you are attached to approval, comparison will always control your life. When you compare yourself to others, what you are really doing is searching for some form of external validation. You want to feel worthy by meeting a standard set by someone else. You want to feel valuable only when others recognize you. You want to feel successful only when others praise you. But this creates a dangerous emotional cycle where your happiness depends on something you cannot control, the thoughts of other people. And the mind loses peace instantly when it tries to control what is not within its power. The truth is, people will always have opinions. No matter what you do, you will never satisfy everyone. You will be criticized for going too fast and criticized for going too slow, judged for taking risks and judged for staying safe, questioned when you stand out and questioned when you blend in. If your happiness depends on approval, then your peace will rise and fall endlessly with every opinion that comes your way. Buddhism teaches that this is a trap that keeps you chasing acceptance like a thirsty traveler chasing a mirage in the desert. No matter how far you run, you never reach the water, because the approval you seek from others cannot fill the emptiness within you. You may not realize this, but every time you seek approval, you give away your power. You allow someone else to decide if you should feel proud or disappointed. Someone else's reaction becomes the judge of your efforts. Someone else's opinion becomes the measure of your self-worth. Someone else's praise becomes the fuel for your confidence. This is a fragile life, because the moment that praise disappears, your inner stability collapses. And the moment someone criticizes you, even slightly, you begin doubting everything about yourself. This is why Buddhist teachings emphasize creating stability inside yourself. When your stability comes from within, nobody can take it away. True happiness begins when you stop needing approval because you finally understand something profound. People see only a tiny part of your journey. They don't know your full story. They don't know your intentions, your challenges, your struggles, or your progress. They see what you allow them to see. They judge based on fragments, not the whole truth. And yet, you give their opinions more weight than your own awareness. This is how comparison gains power, because you value others' standards more than your inner truth. But when you release the hunger for approval, comparison begins to fade naturally, because there is no longer a reason to measure yourself against others. Imagine how peaceful life would feel if you stopped caring about whether others approved of your choices. Imagine waking up each day guided by your own heart instead of fear. Imagine making decisions based on what feels right, not what looks right. Imagine being proud of yourself without needing likes, praise, applause, or validation. This is not arrogance. It is inner freedom. It is the freedom to live authentically without fear of judgment or disappointment. Buddhism teaches that this freedom is one of the purest forms of happiness. You may not notice it, but the need for approval also makes you abandon your true potential. When you want to be liked, you avoid risks. When you want to be accepted, you conform. When you want everyone to agree with you, you shrink your dreams to fit into what others find reasonable. You silence your voice because you fear being misunderstood. You avoid growth because you fear being judged. The life you were meant to live gets replaced by the life you think others expect from you. You become a shadow of yourself, a reflection of external opinions instead of a reflection of your soul. And because you are no longer living your own life, comparison becomes stronger. You look at people who are living boldly and you feel small. You look at people who are authentic and you feel envious. You look at people who are following their truth and you feel disconnected. But the real problem isn't their success, it's that you have been ignoring your own path for too long. Approval seeking disconnects you from your authenticity, and when you lose authenticity, you lose happiness. Because happiness cannot survive where you are pretending. The heart feels heavy when it cannot express itself freely. Buddhism teaches that the only approval you ever truly need is your own. Ask yourself, am I proud of who I am becoming? Am I moving in a direction that aligns with my values? Am I living a life that feels meaningful to my heart? If the answer is yes, then no external opinion matters. If the answer is no, then no external praise can hide that truth, not even from yourself. The moment you start approving of yourself, the world's approval becomes irrelevant. You no longer need constant affirmation. You no longer feel jealous when others succeed. You no longer feel insecure when someone else is praised. Instead, you feel calm inside. You grow in silence. You evolve at your own pace. You honor your inner truth. And your happiness becomes deep, stable, and unshakable. Not because life is perfect, but because your self-worth is no longer dependent on external validation. When you stop needing approval, you also start attracting the right people, those who appreciate the real you, those who respect your authenticity, those who value your individuality. You stop trying to fit into spaces that don't match your soul. You stop begging for acceptance from people who don't understand you. You stop attaching your identity to people's temporary opinions. And slowly, you begin to build a peaceful life where your worth comes from your inner clarity, not from someone else's fleeting judgment. Comparison fades when you no longer seek approval because there is nothing left to prove. You understand that your journey is your own. You understand that validation from others cannot replace the validation you must give yourself. You understand that your life becomes lighter and more meaningful the moment you stop performing for the world and start living for your soul. True happiness begins the moment you look in the mirror and say, with honesty and conviction, I am enough as I am. I am proud of who I'm becoming, and I approve of myself even if no one else does. That is the moment comparison dies and inner peace begins to rise. 10. The more you compare, the more you block your own blessings. One of the most profound truths in Buddhism is that your mindset can either open the doors of your life or quietly close them without you even realizing it. Comparison is one of the subtle ways that people unknowingly block their own blessings. You may think comparison is just an emotion, a passing thought, or a harmless habit, but spiritually, it has a powerful effect on your growth. When you constantly look at what others have, you stop appreciating what is already flowing toward you. When your attention is consumed by someone else's life, you lose awareness of the opportunities appearing right in front of you. Comparison blinds your vision, dims your intuition, and weakens the very energy that helps blessings unfold in your life. Buddhism teaches that blessings, whether in the form of peace, success, clarity, love, or growth enter your life when your mind is open, receptive, and grounded in the present moment. But comparison pulls your mind out of the present. It scatters your focus. It shifts your energy into a state of lack, which makes it impossible to receive new things. When you compare yourself to others, you send a silent message to the universe that says, "What I have is not enough. Who I am is not enough. My journey is not enough." And when your mind is trapped in the feeling of not enough, blessings cannot stay because they have no space to land. Think of it like holding a closed hand. When you grip your fist tightly, no matter how many gifts someone wants to place in your hand, nothing can enter. Comparison creates a closed hand inside your mind. You cannot receive anything new because your attention is too focused on what others possess. Instead of watering your own garden, you spend your time staring at someone else's. And because you neglect your own garden, the flowers you could have grown begin to wither, not because your soil was bad, but because your attention was misplaced. The more you compare, the more you start believing your path is lacking. And when you believe your path is lacking, you stop putting in the effort that would actually help you grow. You begin delaying your progress because you feel discouraged. You begin doubting your abilities. You begin questioning your potential. You begin losing motivation. And all of these emotions slow down the blessings that were meant for you. Comparison also creates emotional blockages. When you feel jealousy, insecurity, resentment, or disappointment because of someone else's success, your energy becomes heavy. Heavy energy closes the doors of creativity, clarity, discipline, and inspiration. 4 things you absolutely need in order to move forward in life. Without them, you remain stuck. It is not that life is not offering you anything. It is that you do not have the inner capacity to receive what is being offered. Buddhism teaches that your inner state reflects your outer reality. A mind full of comparison cannot manifest joy because it is filled with dissatisfaction. A heart full of insecurity cannot manifest love because it is filled with fear. A soul full of jealousy cannot manifest blessings because it is filled with resistance. These emotions block the natural flow of life. They close the spiritual channels through which good things are supposed to arrive. They prevent you from recognizing opportunities that are meant for you. But the moment you shift your attention back to your own journey, everything begins to change. When you stop comparing and start focusing on your growth, your energy becomes lighter, your heart becomes clearer, your mind becomes sharper. You start receiving ideas, motivation, and strength that were once blocked by negative emotions. You begin noticing chances you didn't see before. You begin feeling more confident in your ability to achieve your goals. And slowly, blessings start flowing freely again, not because something changed outside, but because something changed within you. This is one of the deepest spiritual secrets. Blessings do not flow toward the distracted, but toward the aligned. When your attention is scattered, your blessings scatter with it. But when your attention is focused on gratitude, effort, self-improvement, and awareness, doors start opening miraculously. You begin meeting the right people. You begin attracting the right opportunities. You begin making the right decisions. You begin feeling guided instead of lost. Comparison also blocks blessings because it keeps you in a state of misalignment. Your soul has a purpose. Your journey has a direction. Your intuition knows where you need to go. But comparison pulls you off your path. If someone else is doing business, you feel you should do it too, even if your soul is meant for another path. If someone else is getting married, you feel pressured even if emotionally you are not ready. If someone else is succeeding fast, you feel you should rush, even if your path requires patience. Every time you compare, you drift away from the direction your soul is guiding you toward. And when you move away from your true path, blessings cannot reach you. Not because life is punishing you, but because your blessings are attached to the journey meant for you, not someone else's. Another Buddhist teaching explains that comparison blocks intuition. Intuition is your inner compass. It shows you what to do next. It warns you about wrong paths. It guides you toward opportunities perfectly aligned with you. But comparing yourself to others creates noise in your mind. This noise becomes so loud that your intuition becomes almost impossible to hear. You begin acting from insecurity instead of clarity. You begin making decisions based on fear instead of wisdom. And when intuition is ignored, blessings that should have come directly to you pass silently by. To unblock blessings, you must return to yourself. You must become present again. You must shift your energy from competition to trust. You must stop looking at what others have and begin nurturing what you have. Your blessings grow the moment you water your own garden. Your progress accelerates the moment you stop measuring your life against someone else's story. Your path becomes clearer the moment you stop walking sideways into someone else's lane and return to your own. Peace enters your heart when you realize that nothing meant for you will ever miss you. It does not matter how slow your journey looks. It does not matter how far others seem ahead. It does not matter how long it takes. What is written for you will always come when you are aligned, present, grateful, and focused on your own growth. The more you compare, the more you block your own blessings. But the more you trust your path, the more your blessings find their way to you effortlessly. 11. You will never find peace until you learn to value your own journey. One of the greatest truths in Buddhism is that peace does not come from changing your life. It comes from changing the way you see your life. The moment you stop valuing your own journey, you begin to feel lost, insecure, and disconnected from yourself. And nothing destroys inner peace faster than believing someone else's story is more important, more meaningful, or more successful than your own. Comparison weakens your spirit, not only because it makes you envy others, but because it makes you stop appreciating the beauty, the depth, and the purpose of your own path. Peace leaves the moment self-respect leaves, and comparison is the quickest way to lose that respect. When you fail to value your own journey, you start feeling like a spectator in your own life instead of its creator. You watch what others are doing, you follow their paths, you imitate their choices, you chase their milestones, you try to match their speed, and while trying to keep up with them, you slowly stop living your own story. Your dreams become quieter, your voice becomes smaller, your identity becomes blurred. You forget who you are because you are too busy trying to become a reflection of someone else. This is why Buddhism teaches that comparison is not just a habit, it is a form of self-abandonment. When you do not value your journey, you convince yourself that your experiences are not valuable enough. You start thinking your pace is too slow, your achievements are too small, your struggles are too embarrassing, or your progress is too insignificant. You overlook your own strength, your resilience, your growth, and your transformation. You forget the storms you survived. You dismiss the lessons you learned. You ignore the old version of yourself that you worked so hard to outgrow. You take your own evolution for granted, simply because someone else's growth appears more visible. But the truth is that every soul grows differently. Some souls learn quickly through external achievements. Others learn deeply through internal experiences. Some grow through opportunities. Others grow through challenges. Some bloom early, others bloom later. There is no universal timeline for awakening, healing, or success. You cannot measure your journey by someone else's map because the roads you walk and the mountains you climb were never meant for them. They were meant for you. Your life is not a copy of anyone else's. It is a unique expression of your soul. And until you begin valuing this uniqueness, peace will always feel out of reach. Buddhism teaches that everything you experience, every heartbreak, every struggle, every delay, every moment of confusion is shaping you into someone wiser and more awakened. Your journey contains lessons that no one else can learn for you. Your challenges contain insights that no one else can receive for you. Your path contains openings, blessings, and transformations that belong only to you. When you undervalue your journey, you disrespect the very experiences that are meant to elevate you. Valuing your journey means understanding that your life has meaning, even when it looks ordinary from the outside. Some of the greatest transformations happen silently, with no applause, no witnesses, and no recognition. You might be healing emotional wounds that have held you back for years. You might be learning discipline that will shape your future. You might be building patience that will serve you during difficult times. You might be letting go of old habits that once controlled you. You might be growing into a calmer, wiser, more grounded version of yourself. These things won't show up in pictures. They won't be visible to others. But they are the real foundation of your life. When you compare yourself to others, you lose awareness of these sacred inner transformations. You convince yourself that only visible progress matters. But Buddhism reminds us again and again that the unseen is often more important than the seen. The roots of a tree are never visible, yet without them, the tree cannot survive. In the same way, your inner growth may not be visible to others, but it is the root system of your entire life. If you do not value these roots, you start weakening the very foundation that supports your future. Another reason comparison destroys peace is because it disconnects you from gratitude. When you compare yourself to others, you stop seeing your blessings. You stop acknowledging your strength. You stop appreciating your progress. Gratitude and comparison cannot exist in the same mind. When comparison takes over, gratitude fades. And when gratitude fades, peace disappears. But when you value your journey, you naturally become more grateful. You begin noticing things you once overlooked. You begin appreciating experiences you once dismissed. You begin recognizing how far you have come, and gratitude restores peace in a way nothing else can. Valuing your journey also means valuing your struggles. Every struggle you faced taught you something about yourself. It made you stronger, more compassionate, more self-aware. It shaped your character and expanded your wisdom. Other people's struggles shaped them differently, according to their paths. There is no comparison between two souls who are learning different lessons. When you start valuing your struggles, you stop feeling ashamed of your past. You begin honoring the old versions of yourself instead of criticizing them. You begin seeing your pain as part of your growth instead of a sign of failure. This alone brings a powerful form of peace, a peace that comes from self-acceptance. Buddhism also teaches that when you value your journey, you return to the present moment. Comparison always pulls you into the past or the future, either thinking about what you haven't achieved or worrying about what others will think of you. But valuing your journey brings you back to now. It helps you see that this moment is important, this moment is meaningful, this moment contains everything you need to grow. When you embrace the present moment, you stop rushing, you stop overthinking, and you stop chasing a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. You begin grounding your happiness in the now instead of constantly postponing it. When you truly value your journey, comparison loses its power over you. You stop looking at others as competition. You stop believing that their achievements somehow diminish your own. You stop feeling insecure about your timing, your progress, or your direction. You begin living with calm confidence. You begin walking your path with steadiness. You begin treating yourself with kindness. You begin trusting that your life is unfolding exactly the way it is meant to. Peace becomes possible when you finally understand that your journey is not less valuable just because it is quieter or slower or different. Your path is perfect for who you are becoming. Your timing is perfect for the lessons you are learning. Your experiences are perfectly designed for your spiritual evolution. When you embrace this truth, your heart begins to soften, your mind begins to quiet, your soul begins to relax, and you begin to feel something you may have forgotten for a long time, a deep, warm, grounding sense that your life is enough and you are enough. True peace arrives the moment you stop rejecting your journey and begin valuing it with your whole heart. 12. You lose yourself when you try to live a life that isn't meant for you. One of the deepest spiritual wounds created by comparison is that it slowly pushes you into a life that does not belong to you. When you constantly look at what others are doing, achieving, creating, or becoming, you begin absorbing their desires without realizing it. You begin chasing goals that are not rooted in your soul. You begin walking paths that do not match your inner nature. And you begin shaping your identity around a version of yourself that the world wants to see, instead of the version your heart wants to become. Buddhism teaches that this is one of the greatest forms of suffering, not the suffering of failure, not the suffering of pain, but the suffering of self-abandonment. Nothing hurts more than living a life where you can no longer recognize yourself. The truth is simple. You cannot become peaceful, happy, or fulfilled if you are living a life designed for someone else. Yet this is what comparison leads people to do. When someone succeeds in business, you convince yourself you should start one too, even if your soul is meant for something different. When someone posts about their relationship, you believe you must rush into one, even if your heart needs healing first. When someone your age achieves a milestone, you feel pressured to match it, even if your journey is supposed to unfold much later. Comparison slowly replaces your inner compass with external expectations, and when you stop listening to your inner compass, you lose direction, you lose clarity, you lose authenticity, you lose yourself. Buddhism teaches that every person comes into this life with a unique dharma, a personal truth, a personal path, a purpose that is perfectly designed for their soul's growth. Your dharma is not supposed to look like anyone else's. It cannot be copied, imitated, or matched. It is born from your experiences, your nature, your strengths, your struggles, and the lessons you are meant to learn. When you follow your dharma, life begins to feel natural. Things unfold with ease. Decisions feel clear. Your heart feels aligned. But when you step into someone else's dharma, everything feels heavy. Everything feels confusing. Everything feels forced. This heaviness is a sign that you are living outside of your truth. And comparison pulls you further into this misalignment each time you believe someone else's path is better. Instead of asking yourself, what feels true for me? You start asking, what are others doing? Instead of asking, what do I want? You ask, what will others think? Instead of asking, what does my soul need? You ask, how do I fit in? Every time you ask these outward-focused questions, you move further away from your authentic self, your real self, the one that existed before society, pressure, expectation, and comparison began shaping your identity. When you try to live a life not meant for you, you feel constant inner friction. A part of you always feels uncomfortable, restless, or unsatisfied, even when things seem okay on the surface. This is the soul's way of warning you that you are not aligned with your true path. You might achieve what others call success, but inside, you will feel empty. You might gain recognition, but inside, you will feel unseen. You might reach goals, but inside, you will feel disconnected. This is the quiet suffering of living someone else's life. Buddhism teaches that suffering ends when you return to your true nature. This means listening to your intuition, acknowledging your inner desires, respecting your emotional needs, and following the gentle direction your life naturally pulls you toward. But comparison makes this nearly impossible because it fills your mind with noise. It floods your awareness with voices that say, do this, be that, become like them, match their pace, copy their success. And the real you, the soft, quiet, intuitive part of you, gets buried beneath those voices. When you lose yourself through comparison, you also lose joy. Joy does not come from doing what everyone else is doing. Joy comes from doing what feels meaningful to your soul. When you live authentically, even small progress feels fulfilling. Even small steps feel powerful. Even small achievements feel valuable. Joy grows when your actions match your inner truth. But when you act from comparison, joy disappears, because authenticity disappears. Living a life meant for someone else also drains your energy. You feel tired more often, not because you lack strength, but because you are forcing yourself in a direction your soul does not want to go. When your soul resists a path, progress feels slow. Every task feels heavy. Every day feels like a battle. But when you align with your true path, energy flows naturally. You feel motivated without forcing it. You feel inspired without pushing it. You feel alive without pretending. This is why it is essential to stop comparing yourself to others, because comparison tricks you into following a path that will only exhaust you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You also lose your inner wisdom when you stop valuing your own path. Each person is born with an inner guide, an intuition that knows what is right, what is wrong, what is meant to be pursued, and what must be released. But comparison makes you doubt your intuition. You start thinking, maybe I'm wrong, maybe my path is too small, maybe my dreams are not good enough. These thoughts weaken your connection to your inner wisdom, and without that wisdom, you become lost. Buddhism teaches that self-awareness is the foundation of peace. But you cannot be self-aware if you are always looking outward. You cannot hear your inner voice if you are always listening to others. You cannot see your direction if you are always staring at someone else's. This is why returning to yourself is essential. You must reconnect with your own desires, your own pace, your own lessons, your own identity. When you finally stop comparing and start listening to your soul, you begin discovering who you truly are. You start recognizing your true strengths, not the ones the world values, but the ones your soul carries. You begin respecting your emotional needs instead of suppressing them to fit in. You begin honoring your timing instead of rushing because of others. You begin seeing your journey with love and appreciation instead of insecurity and judgment. And slowly, you become yourself again, not a reflection, not a copy, not a comparison, but the real you. This is when peace rises within you. Because peace does not come from perfection, success, or approval. Peace comes from authenticity. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing you are living the life your soul was meant to live. When you are true to yourself, comparison becomes meaningless. You no longer care who is ahead or behind. You no longer feel threatened by others' success. You no longer feel pressured by others' timelines. You begin to walk through life with confidence, clarity, and purpose. You stop losing yourself. You start becoming yourself. And in that moment, you finally experience what Buddhism calls true liberation, the freedom to live your own life fully, without noise, without pressure, and without comparison. As you reach the end of this journey, take a deep breath and allow everything you've learned to settle quietly into your heart. You began this video thinking comparison was just a small habit, something everyone does, something harmless, something normal. But now you can see the deeper truth. Comparison is not harmless. Comparison is not small. Comparison is not normal. It is a thief that quietly steals your joy, weakens your spirit, confuses your direction, and disconnects you from your own inner wisdom. It makes you look outward when the answers you truly need are inward. It blinds you to the blessings already unfolding in your life. It destroys your gratitude, your confidence, your peace, and your sense of worth. Most painfully, it makes you abandon the one person you were born to be, yourself. Each lesson you listened to was a reminder that your journey is sacred, your timing is sacred, your growth is sacred, your experiences, your struggles, your victories, your healing, none of it is random. Life is shaping you in ways you may not yet understand. Life is preparing you for a future you cannot see yet. Life is guiding you through moments that seem slow, quiet, or difficult, not to punish you, but to evolve you into someone wiser, stronger, and more awakened. Comparison clouds this truth, but awareness brings it back. When you learn that your suffering begins the moment you believe someone else's path is better, you witnessed how the mind creates illusions that are not real. When you understood the importance of acknowledging your own progress, you saw how comparison blinds you to your growth. When you looked at how the ego distorts reality, you learned why the heart never compares. When you realized you cannot walk your own path while your eyes are fixed on someone else's, you saw how much of your energy has been wasted. When you explored the power of gratitude, you discovered how quickly comparison dissolves in the presence of deeper appreciation. When you reflected on competing only with your past self, you understood where real strength begins. And as you continued into the deeper lessons, you saw how attachment to approval blocks your joy, how misalignment blocks your blessings, how undervaluing your journey destroys peace, and how living someone else's life makes you lose yourself entirely. Now, at the end of these teachings, you hold something priceless. The awareness that comparison is not a life you must continue living. You have been given the tools to free yourself. You have the clarity to return to your own path. You have the wisdom to break the mental patterns that kept you unhappy for so long. And you have the inner strength to choose yourself again, to honor your uniqueness, to trust your timing, to celebrate your progress, and to walk forward with your own purpose. True freedom begins when you stop measuring your life against someone else's. True happiness begins when you stop needing to match anyone but who you were yesterday. True peace begins when you finally understand that your journey was never meant to look like theirs. It was designed for you, your soul, your lessons, your evolution, your awakening. So, as you move forward from this moment, let these words stay with you. Your life is enough. Your timing is enough. Your path is enough. And you are enough. When you embrace this truth, comparison loses its power forever, and in its place grows a calm, steady, unshakable peace that can only come from living a life that belongs entirely to you.